think one of the wonderful gifts with the book coming out and doing a lot of public work is that you hear a lot from the public. And you start to realize that there are huge societal sleep questions that you need to solve and figure out. And so we're starting to look at those too. A good example here is night owls and morning larks. So there's a thing called your chronotype, and everyone has a chronotype. Are you a morning type? Are you an evening type? Are you somewhere in between? So evening types, they tend to like to go to bed at maybe 1 or 2 a.m. in the morning, wake up at 10 or 11 in the morning. Morning types, they tend to like to go to bed maybe, 9 o'clock in the evening, wake up at 5. And then, most of us, or a third of the rest of the population, is somewhere in between that. Now, what are the consequences? Because society is pushed into favoring morning types. The early bird catches the worm. We reinforce people who are early into work in the morning. We think they're hard workers. So we don't reward the evening types. And in fact, if anything, we sort of stigmatize them as being slothful and lazy because they come into work a little late despite working later usually. And what's the societal impact there on those people? Are the evening types more resilient to sleep deprivation, for example, because they like to sort of, they can stay awake for longer into the evening? Should the evening types be more of the types that we see working in emergency rooms or doctors or pilots? Or are morning types who like to go to bed very early, do they suffer far more from those types of jobs that require them for working into the night? Now, we've never have thought about answering those types of fundamental questions if I hadn't been out speaking to people about these things. So we are served by both of those scions, as it were.
How do you work out your type? Because I think I'm quite good if I get up early, but I also like to stay up quite late at night, so I can't work out which type I am.
So if you were to go onto a desert island and it's just you, no commitments whatsoever, you don't have to wake up for anything, for anybody, what time do you think you would typically drift to then going to bed and wake up early? So you think you would be going to bed a little bit earlier than you typically do?
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
So then if I was devoid of all of the responsibilities and all of the vagaries of sort of modern society and my work schedule and sort of my family life, and what would be my natural tendency? And most people typically know it. The other question that typically comes up in that regard is, how do I know if I'm getting enough sleep? And the answer, probably one of them, is if you're setting an alarm to wake up and the alarm didn't go off, would you keep sleeping? And if the answer is yes, you're not getting enough sleep.
And what about you? Are you a morning type or an evening type?
I am somewhere in between. What's one of the interesting things is that no matter what type you are, it changes across your lifespan. So as children, we're typically all kind of morning types. We go to bed early, and to the annoyance of our parents, we wake up early. But then as you go through those teenage years, you're actually fast-forwarded in time. And teenagers would actually have a biological sort of determined predilection for going to sleep probably around midnight or 1 a.m. and waking up closer to sort of, 11:30, 12. Now, we don't let them sleep like that because of school start times. And it's not their fault. It's not their choice. They don't get to decide. It's hardwired into their genetic, biological circadian rhythm. But then as we start to move into adult life, that sort of timing starts to come back a little bit. Rather than liking to go to bed at 1 a.m., we then start to sort of say midnight and then 11. And then as you get into older age, you kind of regress back almost to childhood, where you're going to bed, typically earlier than you would do in your 40s, and certainly than you did do in your 20s. So everyone changes throughout their lifespan, but across individuals, from one individual to the next, there is huge variability in that chronotype.